Good afternoon to you all, our dear esteemed viewers. Welcome back to this week's episode of the Community Show. This week, we're discussing effects of climate change. Just quickly, let me give you a brief introduction. A few years ago, Uganda, Africa, East Africa, and across the globe, we are experiencing rise in temperature levels. We are experiencing rise in the sea levels. But here at home in Uganda, we are seeing a change in weather patterns in relation to the patterns of the rain. We are seeing drastic air changes in effects to do with floods. We have seen the Bududa landslides. We have seen numerous incidents that have occurred as regards to the effects of climate change. And joining me to discuss this wonderful and interesting but pertinent conversation is a panel of distinguished ladies and gentlemen who will help us unpack the conversation. So I'll just quickly call upon them to say hello and introduce themselves, and we can begin the conversation. I'll begin with the lady on the show today, Miss Naiga Doreen. You're most welcome.
Thank you, Drake. I also commend and appreciate you on the tremendous work you're doing. My name is Naiga Doreen. I hold a Bachelor of Laws from Uganda Christian University, but also a member of the European Union Sounding Board of Uganda, a platform that amplifies young people's voices to the European Union delegation in Uganda in order to have young people's voices in Uganda mirrored into the policy that the EU works for the betterment of our society. A pleasure to meet you all.
Thank you. Definitely a pleasure to have you here. So as a member of the Youth Sounding Board, you're going to speak for young people and give us, you amplify the voices of the youth in this country. Thank you, and I'm very happy to have you here. Mr. Denis Kutosi, you're most welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone, and good afternoon, viewers. My name is Kutosi Denis. I hold a Bachelor of Science in Software Engineering, but I took on a career in farming. So I run my own farm, which is Deniphine Farms, and I'm also a member of the Uganda National Young Farmers Association. Thank you. Nice to be here.
Nice to have you here, Dennis. We're looking forward to get insights from you from the perspective of a farmer and how climate change is greatly affecting farmers in this country. Uganda is largely an agrarian state, so we definitely know that the effects of climate change are greatly affecting farmers. So we'll get your insights on that matter. Last but not least, Mr. Akansasira Junior. Kindly come and say hello, and we begin the conversation.
Yes, hello team. My name is Akansasira Junior Victor. I am a global schools advocate on SDGs, and recently I've been given a team of mentees from 5 African countries. Basically, on CR base, we can improve SDGs and have a campaign for education for sustainable development. I hold a bachelor's degree in education and literature, basically English and literature. I'm a member, in fact, I'm a special advisor of African Union Youth Assembly. I advise them on education, data, and research. Then also, I'm a member, I'm the director of St. Mark's Preparatory Schools. So basically, I'm an educationist. Thank you so much.
Akansasira John Victor. Being an educationist, that means it places on your shoulders a responsibility definitely to educate the younger generation on the effects of climate change that we're facing today. In just the order that we've introduced ourselves, I would like to begin the conversation with the lady on the panel today, and that's Miss Naiga Doreen. Doreen, as you come on the show right now and you turn on your video, we have someone down in the village who definitely doesn't know what climate change is, who doesn't maybe understand that this is a threat that possibly threatens the existence of humankind. So for purposes of the people, our mothers, our fathers, our farmers out there who do not know climate change, kindly give an introduction to what climate change is and paint a picture of what it is exactly that we are talking about tonight. Doreen, you're most welcome.
Thank you, Drake, for the elaboration. In my capacity and understanding, climate change in a layman's language is where we are seeing a difference in the weather patterns, the flooding, and also furthermore, where we are able to how our environment was how our environment is changing. So in my understanding, if we are to bring it down to a layman's language and also a societal understanding, in 1996, we had a green forest cover, and also the seasons were the same, where I know in September is the time when the grasshoppers are falling. In January, it's the time for cultivation. In June, that's the time for harvesting. But nowadays we see in September, the grasshoppers are not coming. When we reach in January, instead of it being time for planting, it's now time for a dry spell. Furthermore, we are seeing areas that were once not flooding, they are flooding. And this is because people are settling in wetlands. And so the entire conversation about climate change and comes back to how do we see changes negatively in how the environment, or in how we used to relate with the environment. That, to my understanding, is how you had asked me, okay, you had told me to define climate change, and that's how I was able to bring it up. If we are seeing the shifts in the temperature and also in the weather patterns, that's how I would define climate change, basing on the weather and also basing on the temperatures. Right now, our temperatures are increasing. In a time span by 2100, the temperature shall have increased by between 4 degrees Celsius and 3 degrees Celsius. So these changes in the temperature, where the country is becoming hotter day by day, where we are seeing a change in the temperature variations, also the rainfall formation, we are seeing all these long-term shifts, which in one way or the other affect human livelihoods in our communities. That, to my elaboration, is how you're able to present the question.
Thank you. That has been a very wonderful introduction to help us kickstart tonight's conversation. So for someone who doesn't know what climate change is, climate change definitely relates to the change in weather patterns over a long period of time. And as Doreen has rightly put it, it therefore brings in the aspect of the effects that she has made mention of: floods, change in weather patterns, among others. But let us now get into the gist of the conversation today. And before we get into the gist of the conversation, I would like to bring in Mr. Denis Kutosi. Mr. Denis Kutosi, when we talk about climate change, there are scenarios that relate to aspects to do with the most vulnerable in the communities. And the most vulnerable in communities, according to research, indicates that we have women, we have young people or children, we have persons with disabilities. And in our community today in Uganda, we are greatly a community that deals in agriculture. And majority of our population, which mostly are women, greatly engage in agriculture. But you yourself also, you are a farmer and you deal in agriculture. Now, let us start the conversation with you relating to the effects that climate change is impacting and having on agriculture in our country. Denis, over to you.
Thank you very much. As a farmer, I'll begin with production. With these continuing changes in climate, prolonged drought, and in some places we have long periods of rainfall. So in such instances, the production becomes costly, because many of our farmers, like we young farmers and the rural women who cannot irrigate, of course, are pushed out of the production, and that means living really a poor livelihood in the little which they could probably do, but they cannot do. And many have also lost very many fields due to drought. I just remember my first experience in farming. That was 2019. Fresh from the university, and I decided to enter into farming, putting maize, and the drought came in and it killed the whole field. I was almost pushed out of farming, but just being resilient. And probably I just could be one of the few of the very many young farmers who are facing the same because of the climate changes, drought in this particular. If we come to floods because people are building in wetlands and so on, they're encroaching on the riverbanks. Where I come from, which is Ududa, and it is typical of floods over the years because of the increasing levels of waters. Personally, as a family, we lost huge chunks of land due to floods and due to landslides. Like trees are cut down, and when these heavy rains now come, everything is swept down, and that is a big effect to us, the farmers. Lastly, also, the production cost becomes high to us farmers, and it makes the whole business less profitable. I'll take an example of poultry farming, because I'm also largely involved in poultry farming, and together with colleagues also do poultry farming. When the drought comes in and there is low production of corn or maize, that means there is little maize on the market. When it becomes little, the prices shoot high of maize. Because over the recent years, we have seen maize go over 1,000, yet we used to buy maize at 7,700 per kilo. That is like 3-4 years ago. But because of the changes, production is low and the cost of maize has gone high. It makes now the production cost high. That also pushes the production cost of eggs or chicken for meat high, which also makes the whole price of the product high. So what I'm driving at is these effects are really affecting farmers. Drought comes in, the production is high, and it makes the whole business less profitable.
Thank you very much for the submissions. It's very unfortunate that the effects of climate change are having a toll on farmers in terms of increasing the cost of production, and therefore renders or affects the profits that you get from the agriculture that your hard-earned money, the hard work that you put in making sure that you get your products. But I'll get back to you. Let's just quickly first get to Doreen, because she has to run away, and then I'll get to you, my brother, Junior Victor Akansasira. Doreen, you are with the Youth Sounding Board, and under SDGs, among the SDGs, we have climate action. And as young people, as a member of the Youth Sounding Board, what do you have in place to see that we mitigate the effects of climate change? Because young people or youth are among the vulnerable communities that are greatly affected by these effects of climate change. Doreen, can make your submission.
Thank you, Drake. In my submission, I also recognize that the conversation around climate change and young people is no longer an option, it's a necessity, because in a population of over 48.9 million Ugandans, 60% of this population are young people. And the conversation around climate change and its impacts, it's an issue of social equality, because the vulnerable people are the ones who are mostly affected. The young lady or the young boy down there in the village, the one who carries out production to see that he's able to get an income, is affected by the changing weather patterns. He or she is affected by the varying temperature. So we are seeing the conversation being started, and it's being brought on board by the young people. If you look at the statistics, and also using social media, but also at the same time grassroots initiatives, you are seeing so many young people are being at the front line. So many young people are coming on to ask for mitigation strategies, adaptation strategies. And as a member of the EU Sounding Board, our role is to, first of all, to see that young people's policies, young people's aspirations are mirrored into the policies of the EU. And what are we as members of the Youth Sounding Board are doing? Recently, we had a meeting with the 20 young people from the Youth Sounding Board of the Royal Danish Embassy in Uganda. And their focus was not only on sexual reproductive health, but also the question about climate change, because we cannot have sustainable development without talking an issue about climate change. So many young people are taking part in different initiatives, including agriculture, including sustainability. We cannot have these conversations aside climate change. And as the EU Sounding Board, in all the policies that the EU is doing, we are seeing that how can young people be mirrored? Young people are having organizations, but they have limited funding. Young people are having these great ambitions, but they do not have a platform to air out their innovative ambitions. And what are we doing as the EU Sounding Board? We are not only advising the EU, but also we are bringing the work of the young people at the front line. In the different engagements we do have with the EU delegation in Uganda, we are able to give examples of organizations that are fronting the question on climate change in Uganda. And what is the EU doing? The EU is trying to bring out grants for the young people to apply. But even though the EU is bringing out grants, which is a great issue, there is still an issue about young people accessing these grants. It's one thing having an idea, and it's another thing implementing the idea. It's the same thing having a policy, but it's also another thing implementing the policy. So there is that big gap that is still hindering the entire process. But as the EU sounding board, our work, we cannot do it in one day, that we are seeing now the EU is reacting, oh, this and this is happening. But rather, why we are trying to make EU open its doors to the young people. When young people are having engagements and they want the EU delegation to come on board, how can we as the EU sounding board to try to start these conversations, to move them away from grassroots level, but to policy level, young people having a seat at the table. But even as we push to see that young people are having a seat on the table, the question we ought to ask ourselves is, are the young people ready for the seat on the table? When young people reach to the table, what are they giving out? What knowledge, what innovative solutions are they doing? And all this comes in that young people have a role to play in not only talking about climate change, but also getting to know what is the world looking at. In case I'm to approach this office, what thematic area in climate change are they looking at? If my organization is focusing on climate change and health, I'm not going to come in and start talking about something, for example, something different. For example, let me use an example. Some of the adaptation measures of climate change, we can talk about renewable energy, which is being fronted by the different young people. But I cannot come and have this conversation about renewable energy in a space, in an organization that I know does not support that. So young people are coming on, we are innovative, they are resilient. Young people are doing tremendous work every day coming in, but the issue they are facing is the aspect of financing. But even as they face the aspect of financing, there is a big knowledge gap that ought to be bridged. Right now, with COP28 coming around the corner, which is going to happen in Dubai, so many young people are going to attend, but are we going to attend, or are we going to engage meaningfully in the entire process? So there is a role to be played by the policymakers to see that negotiation skills are brought down to the young people. I am appreciative to UNDP. A few weeks back, they held the first youth negotiation stakeholder engagement, which happened at Sky's Hotel. And in here, they were able to bring different young people to teach them about the art of negotiation. So all these opportunities are there. You reach the panel, you reach the space, you're able to network and learn what other innovative ways are young people doing. It was at this space where I was able to understand that there is
Excuse me, Doreen. I just want to intervene there on the aspect of these opportunities. There is possibly a young youth out there who is watching this particular show, and they're wondering, where are these opportunities that you're talking about? In your submission, you talked about the aspect of accessibility. How accessible are these opportunities? Because the young people are trying as much as they can to get to these opportunities, but do not have access to those opportunities. Maybe you can conclude on that, and we can have Mr. Victor Junior. Thank you.
Thank you, Drake. Now that's an issue that is actually still holding most of the young people's innovations back, because when you reach in some organizations that are granting these grants, they grant them to already established organizations. But how can we do as young people to push? Other than us fronting our personal agendas, we can come up together with a collective agenda to see that this is what all the young people are asking. For example, in the national recommendation from the climate change youth negotiation stakeholders meeting, young people are able to draft up that these are young people's voices in regards to climate. So accessing the funds is a challenge, but also getting access to information. If you follow on Twitter, there are so many Twitter handles that do have grants that are being given out, but also we ought to learn the art of application. It's one thing opening the application, it's another thing being selected for the application because of what we are able to write. So I understand there is a big gap to be bridged, and this I would call it partnerships with already established organizations to understand how they do it. I understand that having these conversations to have an organization to give you their knowledge on how they're able to grant to have a grant is going to be hard. But how can you do that? We can start from where we are. We can start and later on use the approach of friendly approach. Befriend them, get to know their voluntary aspects in case they're having a session, and then you network one way or the other, because there are people who are going to find you. Sometimes they may not find you because of your strong application. No, it may not happen that way. They will find you because they have interacted with you. So go out there. I know sometimes it's hard, but resilience is what will take you far. And as Elena Roosevelt was able to say, that the beauty lies for those who believe in the beauty of their dreams. So just keep trying. I know it's hard, but reach out to some of the people who have been able to do it and ask them how have they been able to do it, because they also did not start by having a $1 million grant. They started from somewhere, from nowhere. Just know you're not alone, and just get information. How are you supposed to apply for grants? What is needed, and then you're able to align your application to that way. And even most of these are on social media, but some of them they are given. You may find the application on social media, but the person who's giving the grant is giving it to you because he has known you on an individual capacity. And also at the same time, what is the organization doing? We have the opportunity to engage with policy makers on social media. But if what you are doing, it doesn't correspond with the work you're doing, one way or the other, people are going to notice you. Use your social media to build your brand. Your brand will sell you out one day. I know it's hard at first, but soon, one shot at a time, and it will take you there. Those are my closing remarks.
Thank you very much, Doreen. That has been a very elaborate submission and very sweet. It sounded more like you're preaching, which is a very good message. And I think the message relating to climate change is something that all of us as young people need to participate in. Someone once mentioned that just like our parents or our forefathers fought as much for independence, and that was that generational cause. We as young people, our generational cause is one that should be relating to climate change. Let me get to Mr. Akansasira Junior Victor. You've been quiet, and I would like to bring in the conversation. You are a teacher, and you are having young people who are getting to being born in a time whereby they are unprecedented rain patterns, I would say. There are issues to do with famine, among others. But in your sector, and the sector to do with education, how would you describe the effect of climate change? How has it hit young people that you teach?
Thank you so much, my brother Drake. And I want to appreciate CCG for bringing such platforms for us to discuss such pertinent issues. And like I've always said, nothing for us without us. If you're talking about the young people and that you're working for the young people and then you're not engaging them, then you are doing nothing. So climate change, as the other speakers have talked about, is really is really here with us. Like one of the speakers said that preservation of our environment is not a liberal or conservative challenge. It is common sense. That was basically Ronald Reagan. And we have come to understand that the moment we don't come up as young people, as activists, and act, not just talking about these issues here, you know, in workshops on such platforms and stop there, but we must go down in our communities, in our societies, in our homes, and act to ensure that when you plant a tree, so when you cut a tree, then you plant two. That is a campaign that I've been championing in South Sudan, in Jonglei State. I've done this in Goma in Congo. I have done this in Morongo, Tanzania, where I have mentees where I've been championing SDGs. I basically look at what exactly is affecting those countries, and then I leverage on that to ensure that that particular issue is solved. Well, there are several challenges or effects that you know that climate change is basically bringing on us. Just look at education. Like my sister talked about the weather patterns. the unpredictable weather patterns. You know, in the early days when I was still young, we used to predict the weather, that in February to maybe April we shall have rains. So in other words, we have to prepare our gardens in January so that when the February rains come, they find our gardens ready. But now these days it is a different case. So what does this one mean? It means the moment we have prolonged the drought, and then when it falls, when rains fall, that means they will be so heavy, and that they will just wash away everything that we have on the ground. That means our economy will be surpassed, and that means when it comes to issues that we are planning, activities that we are planning, then they will be affected. When it comes to the education system, you have seen our curriculum not basically planned to ensure that issues to do with climate change are not arranged. Like just of recent, you've seen the new curriculum that has been developed by the Ministry of Education and the National Council for Higher Education. I expect them to have climate change education. Even when they called us in the meetings, in workshops, we told them, these are some of the important things we need to add in our curriculum. Just look at Ntoroko district, for example. The floods, look at over 11,000 people being displaced because of floods. These are cattle keepers. These are fishermen. They depend on fishing, and they also depend on rearing cattle. So meaning that as the stakeholders and technocrats, we have not really thought about how best we can champion, we can train these people to ensure that they can prepare for climate change effects. So just look at over 1,400, in fact, 14,000 people being, 11,000 people being displaced, including the young ladies who are being married off at a very young age. These are school goers. So that means we are not sure of the future generation. So an idea that that has just been brought out by the NBS and the NBS report. Just of recent, the district cow Elias Biamungu reported that 50 primary school teachers have so far rendered their retirement letters just because of some of the effects of floods in Kasese. And this is all Rwenzori region. What about areas of Ududa? Last time I was coming from South Sudan, I bypassed Elegu. The whole place was flooding, just because of heavy rains. And this is because there's a lot of cutting trees in the areas in fact in northern region, and talk because they want to be given bribes. So it is really a very big challenge that all of us have to pay attention to and find a basic solution towards that. Then I have read something from the Nile Post when they are saying that climate change is a way to go. Planting trees for us to survive. I have done this in South Sudan where I was championing climate change, that is SDG 13, where I championed a campaign of 100 trees campaign, tree planting campaign. And this has really worked because, you know, South Sudan is a place that has been affected by global warming, and it is really helping them. The floods that are not affecting them that they used to affect them in the early years. So really climate change has affected schools, has affected our crops, has affected our economy as a country, and this is something that all of us has to come up with and talk about and act. Thank you so much, Drake.
Thank you so much, Victor. That has been a very passionate and wonderful submission that you've made there. And I do believe, yes, a call for climate action is something that all of us should be part of and all of us should be passionate about. And well done with the work that you're doing in South Sudan to ensure that all of us have hands on deck, ensuring that we have working on the effects of climate change. Let me get back to you, my brother Denis Kutosi. Still, my question is still going to be related on agriculture. In your earlier submission, you highlighted the effects that that farmers are greatly facing, and you mentioned that climate change is leading to high costs of production, which definitely renders you to receive very minimal profits or proceeds from the hard work that you put in your agriculture. Now, let us just maneuver through the what mechanisms have you employed, or have other farmers employed in ensuring that we have we continue and practice sustainable agriculture, that we see to it that we try to reduce on the effects of climate change. Denis, over to you.
So what we have, it has to begin with us if we are to deal with this effect of global warming. And in this, a farmer really has a great part to play in curbing down these emissions, these carbon emissions, and this global warming. I, as a farmer, together with farmers I interact with through our networks, one, we are advocating for planting trees. And several young people I meet, probably who work in urban centers but have chunks of land back home, it might be family land which is idle. We advise and we advocate for those young people to at least plant trees on such pieces of land if they are not utilized. When we plant trees, these get the carbon dioxide from the environment and then fix it in the soil. And in such a way, we are reducing on the carbon dioxide, the CO2, which is in the environment, and thus curbing down on these climate changes. Secondly, also we are advocating and we are telling farmers to demarcate their pieces of land with trees. At least if you do not have a piece of land where you want to just put trees, put the boundaries as trees. At least have a tree on your boundaries. And in such a way, we're also reducing the carbon. Next, we are also encouraging also fellow farmers to go organic so that we do not put other acids in the soils which also create more emissions. We are advocating for farmers to use organic, to go organic and reduce on the chemical fertilizers which are being pushed in the soils, and in return, they emit the carbon to the environment. We are encouraging them to use like chicken manure, to use cow dung, and to use compost. And we thank organizations which have come up to train us farmers, like Pelam. Pelam Uganda is doing a great job in training us to do compost so that we go organic and reduce on this carbon emission. Let me talk about the heat, increasing heat, which is also affecting farmers. How are we going about that? In relation to poultry farmers, we are encouraging them to build structures in such a way that the heat does not come directly in the poultry unit. So it is not just a matter of just jumping in and putting in a structure. We need to consider the climate change so that the heat does not affect your poultry or your animals, so that we deal with these changes as they come, as we look for various solutions. We're also encouraging young farmers and also people in the world to use alternative sources of fuel. I know maybe as farmers we highly rely on firewood or charcoal, but can we find alternatives? Can we use biogas? But of course, Drake, as you know, the question will come that biogas is expensive to put and so on, but that is what we are advocating for. Probably maybe slowly by slowly we can find alternative sources of fuel like biogas than relying on firewood and charcoal. Yeah, Drake.
Thank you. I still just want to still stick with you on the aspect of alternative sources of fuel. You realize that climate change hits poor people hardest. And statistics have it that Africa, especially in sub-Saharan Africa, in the year 2021 and 2022, over 52 million people have been hit or have been affected by the adverse effects of climate change. And majority of the people that were greatly affected by the effects of climate change are women, children, and young people. Now, and persons with disabilities. Now, I want to focus on the aspect of women, children, young people, and persons with disabilities. These are people who are engaging in agriculture to derive or get a living. But due to floods, due to uncertain rain patterns, among others, this is leading to people have or experience famine, or leading to their crops to die out because, hey, they're not receiving rains. Now, how best would you advise someone who barely can afford biogas, or someone who can barely have access to, let's say, gas for cooking, but only has to rely on the aspect of use of charcoal or timber? What sustainable practices can they adopt to see that we mitigate the adverse effects of climate change? Denis?
Thank you. You bring out a very important issue of biogas in relation to firewood, but also putting in an aspect of finances. Yes, I'm really very aware that maybe farmers could not or cannot afford biogas. But now we are saying, probably if you have cut an old tree. Cut an old tree and plant 3. That can be sustainable. And also we are saying, probably if you have cut 1, put 5 along the boundaries. Do a replacement, such a way that I've used this for firewood, but I have this alternative. Also for young women in the villages, I also volunteer with My Development Initiative, which is basically an organization which encourages farming among rural women in the areas of Bugisu. This is what we are advocating for. Like put bamboo along the boundaries or along the river banks. Bamboo is now very much used in the eastern to curb down the speeds of running water. And we are advocating for edible bamboo, which comes along with very many advantages. You use the shoots as food, which is curbing out the famine. Use the old bamboo as firewood, and then at the same time it is slowing down the running waters, which has been a big effect, which has been a big disaster in Vududa. So that is what we are really advocating for in that regard.
Wonderful. I'm very glad that you are advocating for that. And maybe for the viewers out there, I also recommend that instead of cutting a whole log of tree just for us to go ahead and get firewood, maybe we use the branches of those trees for purposes of sustainability, because we need to use what is enough for us in this current day and age, but also leave some for the future generation to come. But thank you very much, Denis. That has been a very wonderful submission. Over to you, Victor Akansasira. We are on mechanisms on how we can go ahead to mitigate climate change. You are doing a wonderful and tremendous job in Sudan and in South Sudan and other parts of the country as a climate change activist. With all these effects that we are having, I would like you to come and speak to us on the aspect of renewable energies. Denis briefly hinted on it, but maybe for our viewers out there who are listening or hear the word renewable energies, but do not know what these are, maybe you could please come on board and explain to them what renewable energies are and why exactly they should go ahead and adopt them. Victor.
Well, I understand. When you talk about the renewable energy, basically what comes to mind is using something. You talked about what renewable energy is, or
yes. I'd like you to come and hint and let the viewers know what renewable energies is. But as you hint on what renewable energies are, go ahead and tell the viewers why exactly they should adopt renewable energies.
Well, before we go to the renewable energy, I want us to think of one critical issue on what Dennis was talking about on the issue of planting trees. I have realized that most of the people, because of money or because of poverty, when they like planting trees like the eucalyptus, because they think it is very easy it is very fast when it comes to growing. Then also it makes good charcoal, you know. And on the issue of we have, like what we've been doing in South Sudan, we've been encouraging them to plant the fruit trees like the guava. We're campaigning with lobbying these trees from the United UNDP. Then we've had partnerships with the Red Cross that are really providing some of these trees. And then when it comes to renewable energy, we have to think of, in the layman's language, you have to think of having the energy that cannot affect our environment. Take an example: when you burn charcoal, or when you are cooking food using charcoal, or charcoal stove, and you're using charcoal. That basically means that air or that gas that goes in the environment will have to basically affect the environment. And of course, when it comes to the use of technology that most of the friends have been recommending, like for example, using using power, for example, than burning the burning wood, for example, for cooking. And then of course, when it talks about fuel, petrol for driving, then you hear people recommending the use of the electric machines, so that we can reduce we can reduce on the global warming, just because of the gaseous effects. Then when it comes to climate change, this is one of the global challenges in the 21st century that is affecting the developing and the other countries. So an indicator that as young people we have a lot to do to mitigate. What Drake, all of us have to understand is climate change is here. The only thing to do is, if you cannot mitigate, then you have to adapt. And when it comes to adapting, that means all of us, me and you, have to hold this mantle in ensuring that not seriously affected by climate change. And of course, when you look at if you're not cultivating, for example, on buffer zones and the river or lakes, that means you'll not be affected by some of these of the climate change effects. For example, the flood and the other lakes. Then the other things we've been doing in connection to the energy, renewable energy, we have been like, for example, just so recent, when I came to Uganda, I partnered with Global Learning for Sustainability. Then we're mobilizing girls and the other students, other boys in schools they pick these bottles or cavera, then they use them in planting trees or planting flowers that can be basically that can help in beautifying not only the environment but also they are not burning these bottles or polythene papers to to raise these gases that will basically cause the emissions. So that's how basically I would really understand the renewable energy, and thank you, Drake. Yes.
Thank you. That has been a very wonderful submission there, my brother, Akansasira Victor. We're almost reaching the top of the hour of the conversation. So I just want us to bring the aspect of biodiversity loss. People are cutting trees. People are cutting trees. People are going ahead to come up with actions that greatly affect the environment, which is leading to loss of numerous death of species in the environment, which is, in my opinion, very bad for the future or for the sustainability of biodiversity in the years to come. So, Denis Kutosi, you're a farmer still. I am very interested in the practices. You highlighted that you are advocating for mechanisms such as planting of trees, organic farming, alternative sources of fuel. When we are advocating for all these measures, you understand in the short run at the moment, people are already on a large scale cutting down trees. People on a great scale reclaiming swamps for their structures, among others. How are we ensuring the safety of other species that are being killed because we are infringing on their space?
Yes, thank you, Drake. Sure, as we disturb the habitats of these animals, they are running out. So we still, as farmers, what are we doing? I'll begin with still my development initiative, which is a CBO I'm part of, and we are along the Mount Elgon slopes and neighboring the Mount Elgon Reserve. This is what we are doing as farmers. We are really advocating for reforestation of Mount Elgon as my development initiative. We thank UNDP, which gave us a grant, and we were able to reforestate about 12 hectares of Mount Elgon. And we are still looking in for more funds to ensure that Mount Elgon is reforested, because it is a habitat of very many species. So we are going that direction of reforestating.
I really appreciate the fact that you are trying your level best to go ahead and reinstate and put back the habitats of the numerous biodiversity that we have in our ecosystem. And I think when you talk about afforestation and reforestation in Mount Elgon areas is a very crucial point that that you're doing, and thanks to UNDP for the support that it's rendering to you. Personally, as someone who is passionate about environmental conservation and climate action, I really applaud the works that you're doing in areas of Mount Elgon, which I think, in my opinion, is very tremendous. And you definitely need that support to see to it that all of us put our hands on deck in restoring the environment. Mr. Akansasira Victor, sure. Just as quickly Drake, on the issue. Yes. Yeah. Thank you.
Drake,
thank you,
if I can still come in on a personal basis, and as what we're also advocating for small farmers to do.
Yes.
Yeah. So we're also encouraging farmers to mulch, and we avoid tilling our land day in and day out, thereby affecting the worms and affecting the organisms which are in the soils. So we are saying, if you have your banana plantations, can't you mulch them? Let's mulch them and conserve, so that in the process, we're also not exposing the carbon which is in the land to go in the air. So we're also advocating for mulching. We're also advocating for us to use cover crops in our gardens. Like in such a way, these crops also pushing some of the carbon which is in the air back in the soil. And when these cover crops grow We're also advocating for farmers. We are teaching farmers to just slash the cover crops and they make a mulch. So in such a way, we are really maintaining these high levels of carbon into the ground, not opening the ground, and the carbon still go back in the air. So that is what we are calling upon the smallholder young farmers also to do in that regard.
Well done, well done. That's very powerful, and I really applaud you the young people that side that with the work that you're doing. It's very outstanding and it's awesome in seeing to it that we conserve the environment. Let me get to Akansasira Victor, as we're almost reaching the top of the hour of our conversation. Mr. Akansasira, as your way of your recommendations to go ahead and mitigate the effects of climate change and your parting shots, maybe in 3 or 4 minutes, make your submissions to regards to what young people need to do, what everyone has to do to see that we mitigate climate change, and you can give us your concluding remarks in like 3 or 4 minutes. You're most welcome.
Yeah, thank you so much, Drake. I really want to appreciate you once again. Number one, the climate change, the climate crisis has already been solved. We already have facts and solutions, and all we have to do is to wake up and change. The fact that the climate change effects are here with us, we have nothing to do but to come up together and make these vanguard campaigns in ensuring that our environment is safe. Then one of the things that we can do is, of course, ensuring the renewable energy, like you had mentioned earlier, like you had asked me, in ensuring that issues to do with the energy that is derived from the natural sources, like the use of solar power, the use of biogas, which I think most of we have talked about. We've been talking about sustainable education through meeting teachers of physics and science teachers, telling them that teaching these learners these skills on how they can get power and light from these from the organic matter. Then of course involve agriculture teachers, biology teachers, in basically ensuring that they use wood, they use plant, so that they can make the agriculture produces, so that they can make they can use the biomass. Then of course also ensuring, if somebody is teaching geography, then how can they ensure that their lessons, they involve SDGs, climate change within their lesson plans, their schemes of work, to ensure that anything that you are going to teach in your lesson, at least you involve the learners in what SDGs are and what SDG number 13 is all about, because this is one of the challenges that is really affecting the country, the developing countries. Then of course, like my brother said, we have to engage people in different and best agricultural practices. We have to appreciate that this is the 21st century. Then we have to look at the use of technology. If you've been overgrazing, for example, if you're a pastoralist, then learn how to tether your cow in one place, then buy the feed, than having your animals then move in one place, so that from month to month, then for the whole year. We have to learn these practices so that we can have a conserved environment. Then of course, we must look at the mitigation and the adaptation techniques. Like I was looking at the United Nations Institute for Training and Research. We have to embed on research, we have to embed on trainings for farmers and for young people, so that everyone can know issues or the effects of climate change and find tangible solutions to these challenges. Then, of course, as a teacher, I recommend that the Ministry of Education, the National Council for Education must find solutions, must find ways of including climate change education within the curriculum. If this can't make sense, then they have to include this in every subject. At least they make it a topic in every subject that every young person knows what climate change is and solutions towards solving these challenges. Then, of course, my friends, we have to understand that there is a lot of corruption. This I have to say it as a patriotic cadre. There is a lot of corruption with the Ministry of Energy, with the people who are concerned with the environment. I don't know how we can fight this together, Drake and my other colleagues. Can you imagine? We have the wetlands, we have swamps. Somebody knows that this is a river, this is a swamp, but even the people concerned are leaving people to I really don't know. People are encroaching on these natural resources when the leaders are seeing. When they talk to them, then they give them money and they keep quiet. I think this is a very big challenge that all of us have to come together and fight. Then, of course, you have to report, watch over any person that is basically the intrusions of these forests and wetlands. Report to police, report to RDCs, report to people concerned to ensure that our climate is safe. Then, of course, we have to also mobilize NGOs, mobilize CSOs, mobilize partners, mobilize government, mobilize young people, so that we can hold campaigns, hold platforms, and talk about some of these important issues. The challenge we have is that we have a lot of time to discuss on matters that don't matter, and we are silent about matters that matter. Over to you, Drake. Thank you.
Thank you very much. My take home is we spend so much time discussing matters that don't matter and spend so little not even thinking or discussing matters that do matter. So I think it's pertinent that we all get hands on deck, and I think it's our generational cause as young people to be involved in the conversation relating to climate change. But also we need to fight corruption with all odds. It's true that our various institutions have been curtailed and affected with corruption, so it is all our responsibilities to engage in conversations relating to fighting corruption, among others. So let me get to you, Denis Kutosi, as your parting shots and recommendations. What's your say? You're most welcome.
Thank you. First of all, I want to thank this program for choosing this topic, because it all begins with awareness. Like, let's really preach about climate change, the effects, and what can we do to mitigate. So I think awareness is key, and it is on that note where I thank every organization, every individual, particularly reaching out to farmers and teaching us the effects of climate change. Then second, I'll come to a farmer. We as farmers, and I want to advocate and I want to call upon all farmers out there that we can do things differently. We can go organic. We can avoid the chemicals we inject in the environment and go organic and really conserve our environment. Also want to call upon the young farmers to also continue seeking about the knowledge about different things, about how you can do better, about how you can conserve the environment. And next, I want to call all of us, because this climate change affects us and still it is us to do something about it. Think about the fuel you use. Think about whether you really need to drive or you really need to walk there, so that you are reducing the emissions in the environment. And probably lastly, I want to thank really everyone, and I know every listener who will tune into this, preach the gospel of climate change and take action from wherever you are. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You have heard it there from our panelists. They preach the message relating to climate change and climate action. And it is from such programs that creates awareness and lets people know what exactly climate change is and how exactly it's affecting our society. I would like to say thank you to all the panelists who have taken time to join us to discuss this very important and very pertinent conversation as to the effects of climate change. Thank you very much to Ms. Doreen Naiga Babazi, who joined us but unfortunately dropped out because of other engagements. Thank you very much, Mr. Denis Kutosi, for taking time and the work that you're doing to see that we mitigate effects of climate change and practicing sustainable agriculture. Well done to the works that you're doing. And last but not least, Mr. Akansasira Junior, for the works that you're doing in creating climate awareness and seeing to it that we also have climate action in planting trees to go ahead and mitigate the aspects of the CO2 emissions in the atmosphere. When I say CO2, I mean carbon dioxide emissions. Otherwise, tonight has been a very wonderful discussion and a very powerful panel. You have brought to light what climate change is, the effects relating to climate change, what mechanisms we ought to employ to mitigate and adapt to climate change. But lastly, you also give us recommendations on what we can do to see to it that we fight this so-called climate change that is affecting us drastically. From me to you, from Center for Constitutional Governance and Civic Space TV, my name is Douglas Drake. I've been your host or moderator for today's discussion. I would like to say a good afternoon and have a blessed week. Thank you very much.